All right, guys, so once again, things are picking up, and it looks like the rumors were true when it comes to the Nintendo Direct for the Nintendo Switch 1 actually happening this week, because it's been confirmed from Nintendo of America themselves that there will be a Nintendo Switch 1 Nintendo Direct going down Thursday. Let's go over the official announcement, then get into the predictions of what we could see at the show, because despite the Nintendo Switch on its way out when it comes to Nintendo replacing it with the Switch 2, there's actually still a number of games that Nintendo has left. They still have more in the tank when it comes down to it. So let's go ahead and first start off here with the tweet. Nintendo of America says, quote, "Tune in tomorrow, March 27th at 7 a.m. PT for a live streamed hashtag Nintendo Direct, featuring around 30 minutes of upcoming games for Nintendo Switch." This is the other important part here. There will be no updates about Nintendo Switch 2 during this presentation. Watch it here, and of course you can watch it right here as well, because I'll be live reacting to the show. I'll be up bright and early when it comes down to it. It's at 7 a.m. so I'll be up a couple hours before then, getting you guys prepped up, ready, going over different things, getting your predictions. So make sure if you can hang out, come through to the stream here. We'll have a lot of fun. But let's get into the next part of what Nintendo had to say. They also stated that in a follow-up tweet, information about hashtag Nintendo Switch 2 will be shared on April 2nd at 6 a.m. PT in the Nintendo Direct, Nintendo Switch 2 4/2/2025 presentation. So keep that in mind, guys. They're also reminding us that yes, we still have another Direct, but the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, that is a separate thing. They are treating it separate. It is going to be next week. This Direct is all about Nintendo Switch 1 and all the games that they still have to let us know about. But I want to let all of you guys know that aren't subscribed to hit that subscribe button to get the best Nintendo Switch 2 content coming up, RPG news, and more. Also hit that like button and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Now let's go ahead and jump into exactly what we could see at this Nintendo Direct. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Nintendo Switch 2 after that. So first up, I've been saying for quite some time now, I have received information, and this is something that also Nate the Hate and other people have talked about, Fire Emblem 4 Remake. Where is this game? What is going on with this game? Nintendo, this game needs to be a thing, so I'm getting into the prediction side here, guys. Fire Emblem 4 Remake could absolutely show up at this event. Once again, it's been something that I've heard about for quite some time now. Nate has heard about it. There has been rumblings about it, and this is where they are in the remake type of timeline after what they did with Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, and everything. So they're at this point. Now, Fire Emblem 4 or Genealogy of the Holy War is one of the biggest games for the Super Nintendo, and a full remake of that would be a massive endeavor. I don't know if this is going to be a cross-gen type of thing with Fire Emblem 4 Remake, and then maybe there's some Switch 2 upgrades. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to be able to get it done or what style that it would look in, because this is more of a dark, gritty, it's that 90s style of, I would say, art and everything with Fire Emblem before it kind of took a little bit of a different turn to a little bit more rounded out with Awakening and some of the newer games, or even Engage, which is kind of a completely different style than what they've done before. And we don't know if this would be a Koei Tecmo type of thing where they teamed up with them with Fire Emblem Three Houses with Intelligent Systems. We just don't know at this point. So I am waiting to see what Fire Emblem 4 Remake is all about, and I'm hoping that they finally show off this game. It's been a couple years now at this point, and I would love to play a Fire Emblem remake or a Fire Emblem game. So let's get this done. Let's hope it happens. Next up is Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3. This is still something that we need to see. And Metroid Prime 4. There's a rumor, not sure if it's true, but there's a rumor saying that maybe Metroid Prime 4 won't be at the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation as a showcase game. So if that's the case, then maybe it'll be here. Nintendo will say 2, 3, and 4 and kind of have it all together almost, I want to say like a Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 3 or Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3 thing that they did at the Game Awards a number of years ago, because that was just like a title screen or whatever for Bayonetta 3. But I do feel that we could see, of course, more on Metroid Prime 4, and then them saying, okay, Metroid Prime 2 and 3 shadow dropped. It's just available right now if you want it digitally, and then later physical, you'll be able to get it in a double pack later down the line. But I could see them doing that because they did it before with Metroid Prime, and that was actually a huge success. The game ended up selling over 1 million copies. People were excited about it. So if they shadow drop tomorrow Metroid Prime 2 and 3 digital, and then later did the physical, which gets people to double dip as well, I can absolutely see that being a thing overall, because once again, they've done it before and it was successful. And I think that, yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is coming. We know it's coming. It's set for this year. It's still a Switch 1 game, although I think that there will be some Switch 2 patches or improvements or something like that, but it's still a Switch 1 game at the end of the day. So maybe we see Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3, and Metroid Prime 4 all back to back to back in this Nintendo Direct. Okay, the next prediction here has been said a million times. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD. These are both games that people have wanted for quite some time. Nintendo has not put them out, and the only reasoning that I can think of is because they wanted people to focus on the new Legend of Zelda games and the remakes that they were doing. If you put out Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, maybe people's attention are divided to those other games and not on Breath of the Wild and not on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and not on some of the remakes they wanted to do, like Skyward Sword and Link's Awakening. So that's the only thing I can think of why these didn't come over at this point. Now, they could also be doing some type of GameCube thing, but the HD remasters of these games actually add a lot of useful features. Now, a lot of those are tied to the gamepad when it comes to Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, but remember, those came from systems that weren't originally on a gamepad with the GameCube and the Wii, so it doesn't necessarily need gamepad overall, and they can adapt it just like Xenoblade Chronicles X was adapted for the Nintendo Switch without a gamepad. So I don't think that's necessarily crucial to why or anything like that, why it hasn't, but I do feel that it's just something that should be noted at least. But I think that Wind Waker, Twilight Princess finally make the jump over, and I think that hopefully there's some notable upgrades and improvements. If it was 60 frames per second like they did with Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, that would be awesome. That was an incredible remaster they brought over when it comes down to it. So I'm hoping that if they do bring over Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, that those are both bumped up to 60 frames per second overall, because Wind Waker actually ran a little rough on the Wii U at times out in sea, and Twilight Princess was okay, but there were some issues as well with control and different things. So if they just really spruced those up just a bit and brought them over, I think that would be a really good announcement and pretty much make most people's show. Even if the rest of the show was terrible and didn't have anything else that was good, having this would just be good enough. All right, next up is what Nate also rumored too, is Kirby Planet Robobot. It seems like that game is happening as well. I mean, it's Kirby. We know Kirby always comes to Nintendo Switch. They've already done a number of remasters and re-releases. And yeah, they got a lot of money coming in because Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that game has sold nearly 9 million units or so. So I definitely see them bringing over one of the best Nintendo 3DS games, one of the best Kirby games, Kirby Planet Robobot, over to Nintendo Switch. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got maybe another Kirby game or two, maybe something else smaller when it comes to one of his portable experiences or something else like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more Kirby in store when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 1 and of course Nintendo Switch 2 in the future. I definitely see them making a brand new big Kirby game, just because once again, Kirby and the Forgotten Land did so well. It sold incredible overall. It'll probably be a 10 million seller when it's all said and done years and years down the line, because people still buy Kirby and the Forgotten Land still to this point. So yes, Kirby Planet Robobot, I definitely see that coming out and doing really well, because a lot of people missed Kirby Planet Robobot and Triple Deluxe. Maybe there's a double pack, maybe there's Triple Deluxe and Kirby Planet Robobot. I doubt it, but that would be really cool if there was both of them there at this show, because those are two good Nintendo 3DS titles. Okay, I still think that there's going to be some smaller third-party games that come over to the Nintendo Switch. We're going to see some little things here and there. We're going to see some of the other stuff, maybe like Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, things like that. So I do see that there's going to be more titles, maybe Lunar, that game's coming out. So we'll see overall with the third-party stuff. I don't even want to sit there and say Silksong. I know people are going to be like, Silksong, Silksong. If Silksong somehow showed up at this event, it would be the craziest thing that I've ever seen overall, like with anything. It'd be so crazy. I have never seen a game go through this type of metamorphosis or go through this type of period where it's shown at Nintendo's Direct, like in 2019. So like 6 years ago, it's actually playable. They're playing it with Nintendo. Nintendo is there playing the game at the treehouse at the E3 and all that, and then it literally disappears up until like what, a number of years ago at the Xbox showcase. But they had it playable with the Nintendo Switch version right there at the Direct at E3, and it's just been MIA for the most part. We have not seen it playable again in any other form or fashion. If Silksong makes it, cool, but I am not predicting that, and if I'm wrong, great. That's something that I would love to be absolutely wrong about, so we'll see with Silksong. I know people are just waiting and putting that in the comment section over on Nintendo's page on Twitter, but anyway, let's get into my crazy shot in the dark. Probably won't happen, but maybe it does happen, and that is Chrono Trigger HD 2D Remake. This could be a one more last thing game. This could be one of the showcase pieces that they do after headlines and they have take a look at this. I mean, this is something that it's the 30th anniversary for Chrono Trigger and they've done nothing at this point. I'm going to draw a couple parallels here between what happened with Super Mario RPG. People were wondering, where is Super Mario RPG? Yes, it was on the Super Nintendo Classic, but it wasn't on the online service. There was no re-release of the game in any type of way on the Switch. People were wondering what is happening with it. Then a couple years ago, they said, here you go. At the Nintendo Direct, they showed it off a full remake. Now, I don't know if this will be a full remake. Maybe they would do a full remake for Chrono Trigger. Maybe that's why it's taking so long to release it on modern platforms. They have this idea that they want to go with. But I do think that it's possible that they do what they did with Live Alive and do what they did with Octopath Traveler and use one of the Nintendo Directs in order to promote an HD 2D classic game that's beloved on a classic Nintendo system. With Chrono Trigger, that's a Super Nintendo. This is one of the greatest games of all time. It's my favorite game of all time, and it really led to me loving RPGs. I mean, Final Fantasy did as well and other RPGs, but Chrono Trigger, man, in the mid-90s, it was just an incredible, I would say, exploration of the RPG genre, and it was something that was so personal. You felt like the story was connected with you, man. It was crazy how well done this game is and still is to this day. So if they bring it back here, Chrono Trigger HD 2D Remake, or even just a re-release of Chrono Trigger, which I don't think they would do one more last thing for just a Super Nintendo version or a DS version or whatever, or the PC version of Chrono Trigger. It would have to be something like a full remake or something like a HD 2D remake. But yeah, I think that that's my crazy shot in the dark. One more thing or potentially big showcase game would be Chrono Trigger HD 2D Remake. Now, let's get into Nintendo Switch 2 just briefly. There are some concerns that I did see people on Twitter say like, oh, well, they're not focused on Switch 2. I want them to just focus on that. But you guys have to realize, and this is something that I've said in my videos, is that Switch 1 isn't going anywhere. There's over 100 million active users on the Nintendo Switch 1. When Nintendo Switch 2 comes out, there's not going to be 100 million sales for the Nintendo Switch 2 anytime soon. There are going to be a lot of children, a lot of people who maybe don't have the money or don't feel like buying a Nintendo Switch 2 right there at launch, and there needs to be games to facilitate to these people. These people also need games as well. It's very similar to how when the PlayStation 3 came out, Sony was still talking about PS2, games were still coming out on PS2. When the PS5 came out, people were still talking about PS4 and playing games on PS4, and Sony still actively serves a lot of those PS4 gamers, and there were a lot of cross-gen games like Horizon, in addition to God of War and Gran Turismo. So Nintendo was going to do a similar thing here because they have a healthy, vibrant install base of Nintendo Switch 1 where they make multiple millions of dollars and have people playing and buying games every single day, every single month. There are millions of games being sold. So the Nintendo Switch 1 isn't just going to be swept under the rug completely like Nintendo's done with their previous systems, where most of the time in Nintendo history, the system's already dead and buried by the time that the new system comes out because the sales have tanked and Nintendo has completely stopped development on that current platform and moved everything over to the next platform. But I do think that that's not the case here. The extended life of the Nintendo Switch 1, in addition to the active player base still being so high, has caused Nintendo to rethink exactly how they do things when it comes to the length of their systems or the life of their systems and how they transition from one generation into another. Now, don't get me wrong. When we get that presentation next week and when Nintendo goes into it for the second half of the year, it's going to be all about Nintendo Switch 2. There's going to be a ton of games. It is going to be crazy. I cannot wait to see what they have for us. But at the same time, there still needs to be a few things here and there for Nintendo Switch 1 players, and Nintendo Switch 2 players will get everything that the Nintendo Switch 1 is having because it's backwards compatible, which is why it's so important to have that backwards compatibility and why Nintendo felt probably confident that they could do a Nintendo Direct for Switch 1 right before Switch 2, because everything that is playable at this Nintendo Direct on Switch 1 will be going to the Nintendo Switch 2. Whereas unlike with the 3DS, you can talk about 3DS, but then people on Switch are like, oh, wait a minute, I can't play Metroid Samus Returns on the Nintendo Switch because it's on 3DS and it's not compatible with it overall. So that's the big difference here. Everything that's going to be available on Switch 1 will be coming over to Switch 2, and maybe even with patches, upgrades, performance boosts, and all of that. So there's also something to look forward to. But what do you guys think when it comes to my predictions here and the Nintendo Direct? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch RPG videos and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.